So in this clip we will be adding a folded string of fabric at the end of the sleeve and fastening it to the sleeve with the help of the 3D button tool, which we didn't have the chance to use yet. And this 3D button tool can be found above the 3D window right here. So we have the button tool, the buttonhole, and a way to fasten both of these, which is the fasten button tool. And we can also move the buttons and the buttonholes with the help of the move tool. Now before starting, let's prep the area, and before I started this clip I actually went in and pulled the fabric on the sleeve a little bit lower, so I didn't have as much wrinkles now that I did before. And before you start working on this, I would suggest that you would do the same. So basically just pull a little part to make this area where we will be inserting our pieces of fabric a bit more smoother, since that way it's going to be easier for us to work. And before we start, let's start by positioning a pin right here in this area. So once we are under simulation mode, and we are going to grab this, and we are also going to press W in our keyboard and just grab this part in the air. So this is made for the easier positioning of the fabric that's going to be basically showed on the inside part of the sleeve. So let's grab our internal polygon tool. We are going to make a short internal line right here at the end of the sleeve. Now it doesn't really matter which sleeve we choose to work on because they are both under symmetrization. So the changes will be applied to the other sleeve as well. And let's also use the 3D window to see how we position this. I think we can move it a bit and also make it shorter. So the piece of fabric that we'll be creating is going to be shown on to this piece. So let's grab the rectangle tool and click and drag to create a rectangle. Make sure that the width is approximately something as the line we just created. And next we are going to go to a 3D window and position the piece of fabric help of the our gizmo. But actually before we do that, we can also use our segment sieving tool to connect these pieces together, and it is going to be easier to position this with the gizmo once we see the seam lines. So something like this. Okay, and be sure to somehow trace it in, so underneath the sleeve, because we don't want it to be shown on top of it, so we need to position it to make sure it's going to be shown on the inside part, something like that. Let's see if may our pattern overlapping. Alright, and let's simulate. Here we have the piece of fabric positioned. Now first I am also going to clear this area a bit up here. Maybe use the pin ones, so sort of get rid of the wrinkles that are in this area. It's going to make it easier for MD to simulate once we have the buttons on. And let's also put a pin at the end of this fabric, so right here. And let's just move it with the help of the gizmo, so not by pulling this, going to be easier. Alright, before we move any further, I am just going to click on the pattern in the 2D window and lower the particle distance to 10. And since we are working with the very small piece, it's advised to go lower with the particle distance, because that way we get lot more information. So this strip of fabric is going to be folded just like that, and also make sure that it's going straight down. Okay, so I think this area is prepared very well. Now we can proceed by adding 3D button and the buttonhole. So if we think about it, the button is going to be shown on this shirt and the corresponding buttonhole will be on the strip of the fabric. So let's take our button tool in the 3D window. Now we can position a button here in the 3D window or in the 2D window. I prefer to do in the 2D window. So just let's opt of something like that, and we are able to see it here as well. With my move tool, I will also try to position it somewhere here, I would say, and let's try with the buttonhole as well. So the buttonhole is going to be here where the pin is also located. Maybe we can also move the buttonhole with edit button tool somewhat around here. Alright, now we can also access something to this button and but hole in the object browser. So if I have the button tab open, you can see this is default button that we just created, and we can also lower its size to about 12, and you can also play around and change the shape if you want, and the way you can even choose the color of this button. We just gonna leave it this point. Now let's open the buttonhole tab and select the default buttonhole. We can also reduce the size around 12. You can change the shape of the buttonhole, maybe even add your own shape here. Now next, the only thing we have to do is connect this, so fasten this button, and we are going to do so with the fasten button. So we are going to do so with the fasten button tool and basically click hole or the other way around. That actually doesn't matter to give MD the instruction that these two should be together. Now before I start simulating, I am actually going to press the Ctrl and W to get rid of the pins that I just created and simulate. And as you can see, where everything is fine, and of course our button is actually not going through the fabric the way we want, and that is actually something quite common. Sometimes we just need to correct it a bit more. So I am just going to pull this fabric. Somehow you can even try going off simulation mode, getting the select and move button, clicking the button, right click and go reset 3D position. But I already see that this is not going to in our case. So we are gonna have to manually correct this, and of course if we have tighter fabric, we have something with less wrinkles, it would be 0. But since we have oversized sleeve, even harder for us. So what I am doing is I am just trying to pull this fabric through the button. So the button needs to go through the buttonhole. There we go. Okay, let's try to remove the pins. Alright, and I am satisfied with the roll intact, and now all that is left to do is do the exact same thing with the other sleeve here, and I am just gonna let you do that on your own. And in the next clip we will be adding details to the shorts. Show some pockets. We are going to be putting some internal lines and getting to know a little bit about layer clones.